Hello everybody, it's Colin Ellis here. How are you? Welcome to the Culture and Coffee podcast for Monday the 13th of December 2021. Got all the noises going on here. I'm outside today, so I've got a tram line and cars to the front. I've got a train line to the back, helicopters overhead, it's not far from the hospital, and young children next door, as well as the false minor birds and the blackbirds. So it's all going on. So I expect to be interrupted at various stages throughout the day today. So in this week's podcast, I'm going to be talking about how culture is everyone's responsibility. But before that, let's get to the coffee. Let's get it here. So it's a Kimmel Plantation A from Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea. So Papua New Guinea, I think, is an island to the north. You should know this. It's an island to the north of Australia in the Pacific Ocean. Should have done this as part of my homework. I think it's right at the top of Australia. So the kind of nearest city to it, or nearest place is, so it's not far from, where's that? Cairns, Port Douglas, presumably up in the north. Sorry, I'm doing my geography. But yeah, it's literally, if you look at the map of Australia, so Papua New Guinea is at the top right-hand corner of again, a volcanic island, so just perfect for growing coffee. It's roasted by Runner Duck Coffee in Wollongong in the Illawarra region of New South Wales, and it has notes of citrus, light cocoa and apple. Have a little taste of that. Oh, that's so smooth. That is delicious. Now, I was actually in Runner Duck Cafe in Wollongong. So every time I travel, it's great to be travelling again to Canberra this week. Canberra's the nation's capital. And there's a great little coffee shop there. I already know where it is, and I'm looking forward to going there. But I found the Runner Duck Cafe in Wollongong. Asked if they had a filter on. He said no. And he said, I can make you a V60. I'm like, yes, I would love a V60. Now, V60 is pour over. So in previous episodes, I've talked about a pour over and what the pour over is. So the name V60 is simply the name given to the receptacle by its maker, Hario, who are based in Japan. So it's a result that the actual receptacle itself is it's like a cone-shaped ceramic cup that sits on top of a jug, and then when they brew it, so when they get they've got like a metal jug almost of hot water, and they pour it slowly over the coffee grind, and it filters through the cup and into a jug, and then they bring you the jug, and they bring you a jug and a cup. I just love the way that they served it. But the actual, the sides of the ceramic cup itself are angled at 60 degrees. Because apparently that's the I haven't measured it myself, I'm just going to take their word for it because they're the experts. It's angled at 60 degrees. So the optimum angle through which the coffee is brewed is through this angle of 60 degrees, which is incredible. So V60, so Hario are the glassware company. They're based in Tokyo, or they're headquartered in Tokyo. But the V60 kind of ceramic cup itself is made in the town of Arita, which is in the Nishimatsura district, Saga Prefecture, Japan, which is on the island of Kyushu, which is the third largest of Japan's 5 islands. I suppose as you look at that on the map now, I do know where this is. So Kyushu is kind of directly below South Korea on the map. So it's there, but it's this real kind of famous, Arita it's world famous for ceramics. So of course, part of my homework, I went and had a bit of a read about it. So it's got a ceramic museum, a porcelain park, and every year in April and May, it has an annual ceramic fair. So there you go. So the V60 itself is actually only 17 years old, which was a surprise. For some reason, I thought it was older. We emigrated to New Zealand in 2007, so that's 3 years after. I feel like it's something that I was aware of. Maybe 2007, 8, 9, maybe. I mean, New Zealand, Australia, obviously not that far away from Japan, and kind of almost the world lead. They must be the world leaders in coffee. Like, they take it so seriously to the point of snobbishness. To the point of snobbishness where they have a podcast about it. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, it's only 17 years old. And they use ceramic. Why do they use ceramic? Because it's better at retaining heat through the brewing through the brewing process. There you go. It clearly need more coffee because I haven't quite woken up. So yes, traveling again. This is hopefully my last week of delivery. Well, not hopefully, it is my last week of delivery. Got a pretty full-on week this week. This week in Canberra, and they couldn't decide whether Melbourne was going to be the capital of Australia or Sydney was going to be the capital of Australia. So they just created a capital in between the two, and that's I'm totally downplaying. It's such a great little place, Canberra. It's quite different from the east coast cities of Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, obviously, because it's inland. It's got no surf beach, which is pretty popular here. Someone asked me this when I was in New South Wales last week, like, Colin, do you surf? I'm like, yeah, lads, not really the kind of thing we do in Liverpool, surfing. It's like, what do you do? It's like, we play football, we drink, we listen to music, all of which I still do. And I'm running a culture course now with my culture programs. So what I do is there's 2 days for all employees. But the prior to that, I spent 90 minutes with kind of the senior management team, or what's considered to be the leadership team. Because even though culture's everybody's responsibility, it's really important that senior managers role model what they expect of everybody else. And so this is often forgotten, or better still, it's often glossed over. It's kind of easy, you know. And I've talked before on the podcast, and I talk in the videos that I put up on YouTube and stuff like that, is that senior managers are great at talking about culture. You know what? I probably did it myself. In the past. You know, a teamwork we used to call it. We didn't really call it culture. We called it teamwork. They're great at talking about it, but when it actually comes to doing something about it, they kind of shy away from it. Or else what they'll do is they'll stick it in a too hard basket and be like, you know, culture's really important. We need to make sure we have a really good culture. And then, like, people are like, oh, what are we doing? It's like, oh, we'll have an offsite at some stage this year. Like, it's always bottom of the list. It's always like the last thing that you actually get round to doing it. So I always want to make sure that whenever people undertake a culture program, you know, and the 2 days is like, there's lots to it. It's highly engaged. There's all these things. But ultimately, if leaders don't take the lead post the 2 days, then staff are always going to look at them and go, well, hang on a minute, we all committed to doing this differently. We've created these agreements. We've got this culture deck now that, you know, perfectly describes our culture and the team that we want to become. And we're looking to you as a leadership team to take the lead here. Now, don't get me wrong, as I mentioned at the start, everyone's got a responsibility, right? So everyone's got to show up. Everyone's got to have the right attitude every single day. And we all know what the right attitude is, right? You've got to get out of bed with intent. You know, you've got to be a good teammate. You've got to understand your job. You've got to be good at your job, and you've got to want to do it. And you've got to build in time for a break, you know, such that you can be productive throughout the day. So everyone's got a role to play. Everybody's got to do their bit. However, senior managers, is on you. It's really on you to show other people how to do it. And, you know, during the workshop that I ran last week, someone was asking me about leadership, you know, and the fact that I'd said, you know, leadership is a choice. And this guy asked me, he's like, you know, do you think enough people make the choice? And I said, well, no, I don't. But, you know, partly that's down to them not being aware of the choices that they need to make. And it's, you know, it's a real mix of technical and emotional expertise. So partly it's down to that, you know, and partly it's really hard to do. It's a really tough thing to do every single day, is to be a leader, which is why when you meet people or you kind of follow people who are leaders, it's hard to know just how much work they're doing, right? But you see that they're able to moderate their behaviour in ways that you don't really think is possible. And so in those situations myself, I used to write loads of notes and do all of these things because I aspired to be like them. I didn't aspire to be them, I aspired to be like them, particularly in the way that they handle people and that they were good at their job. And I remember asking one of my bosses how he stayed on top. of all of the new information that he needed to learn. He said, how do you think I spend my weekends? I was like, I just thought you spent them with the family. And he was like, oh, God, no. Oh, God, no. It's like, I definitely don't do that. He said, I do lots and lots of reading. He's like, I want to make sure that I'm, on top of my game. He said, when I go to conferences, I make the best use of them. He said, I go and listen to presentations. He said, but I also go and look at the technologies and ask questions. And after he told me that, I did exactly the same. So I would go to conferences and all of those kind of technology booths. I would just go and ask questions, and how is this used, and how is it different, and how does it enhance the value of the work that we do, and all of these kinds of things, and look to take something from the different speeches that people were doing, such that I could get better at being a kind of a good human being. But I still think there's a naivety that some senior managers have when it comes to culture. So there's a great example in the press last week here in Australia. Is the CEO of a, let's call it, food retail company, attended a Christmas party in a Native American headdress. Like, listen to the podcast, you'll be like, he did what? And, I was the same when I saw the pictures and read the story. I'm like, seriously? Like, how can you be so culturally insensitive and culturally unaware of just how bad that is? Like, it's bad enough if he was doing it with his mates, right? The fact that it was a company Christmas party as well is like, look how insensitive I am, and I'm going to demonstrate it to the rest of you. So, similarly, there was the head of the airline who harassed and bullied staff, and yet all of these people rely on culture to deliver results. Like, how do you think all these results happen? It doesn't happen through insensitivity. It doesn't happen through bullying and harassment. This misplaced notion that people have is, if I shout and bawl at someone, they'll be more likely to deliver results. Like, really? You know what? Maybe 20 years ago, and only maybe 30 years ago, maybe. Because the world was a very different place. Well, it was, and yet, still the best way to... I used to have a boss who used to rant and rave, and you know what I wanted to do for him? Nothing. I used to think, if you can't treat me properly, I'm a human trying to do a job. So Google used this great thing called Just Like Me, and I reflect on some of those things, when I talk about culture and teach culture and getting people to think, whenever you're frustrated with another human in your team, if you feel the anger building, which is a normal human reaction, right? To feel anger, you just don't want to verbalize it. That's what you don't want to do, because that then undermines the psychological safety in the team. Is, they're a human being just like me. They're a parent just like me. They're trying to do their best just like me. They get the bus or the tram to work just like me. They got a mother and father just like me. All of those things that dial it right back to that human-to-human interaction. And so, this is, if you're a manager, you need to keep this uppermost in your mind. If you want to build and maintain a vibrant culture, then it starts with you looking at yourself, right? The title of this podcast, Culture Rots from the Top. It is, of course it does. You've got to show everybody else, not only that you understand the importance of culture, but that you recognize that safety, the ability to speak up, the ability to challenge, the ability to be able to share opinion without any kind of, shouting and ranting and screaming and all this. There's a question on, I think it was on LinkedIn that I saw it, about swearing, and some guy posted a question about, is it something that's acceptable in the office? It's a question that comes up in time to time in the workplaces. Like, if you work in America, it's not acceptable any time. Whereas here in Australia, it's a bit more of a social culture. It really depends on the kind of organisation that you work in. Also depends on the context, and it also depends how it's used as well. And I think, I worked with a recruitment company. They were very liberal with their language, but, when you went for an interview, they talked about that being part of their culture, and it's not for everyone. Atlassian, one of Atlassian's values is, we don't F the customer. Like, so you kind of understand the nature of the business and the culture that you're walking into. Now, I've worked with Atlassian, I've been to the office a few times, hugely respectful. You never get a sense that there's an undermining of psychological safety. They kind of use it candidly. And this is the importance of defining culture, right? And this is why leaders have to be part of it, because the team will talk about likes, don't likes. They'll talk about the things they do well, and often one of them was his language and the way that they speak to each other. It's an opportunity to shine a light on some of the things they don't do quite so well, and opportunities for improvement. And at the end of that time, what you've got is this real understanding, this commitment to each other, that this is what culture needs to be moving forward. And then leaders have got to demonstrate it. But not only that, leaders have got to demonstrate it, but then they've got to hold other people to account that don't do those things. And often you can't do that as a manager if you haven't spent the time defining culture. Now, I'm talked about this, I'm blue in the face, but you can't hold anyone to cultural expectations if you haven't taken the time to define them. It's the same thing as you can't performance manage anyone unless you set expectations in exactly the right way, and only then can you come back and say, we agreed to, blah, blah, blah. It's the same with culture. And so every year you should be planning like a team building day with your team, right? Where you define, you look back at last year, what did we learn? What did we do well? Take the opportunity to celebrate success. What are some opportunities we've got for improvement? What are some behaviors that we want to see this year? For some it'll be empathy, for others it'll be courage and discipline, that kind of thing. And what are those principles around the way that we work together? And those principles are the way that you kind of address some of the shortcomings. So I'll give you an example. One of the culture workshops I ran recently, there was a recognition that they had loads of technology tools, but they weren't actually using them in the right way. And so they came up with a culture principle that said, we use technology to support productivity, right? And then they can hold each other to that, to sort of say, and this is where leaders, the role of leaders, say, hey, listen, we said that we would use technology to support productivity. That's not what we're doing here. We're using it as a back channel for gossip, or whatever they were doing. I can't remember what they were doing. So yes, everybody has a responsibility. Yes, everyone has to show up with the right attitude. Yes, everyone has to contribute to culture, which means that for more extroverted people, then you have to listen. There are times when you have to shut up and listen to other people's ideas and consider other people's ideas. And for introverts, yes, you have to mix socially and do some of those social things. But again, all of those things only work best if that's what you agree as a team. If you've got a senior manager saying, we're going out for drinks and you've got to come, like the inner child in you is like, don't go, that guy's an idiot, don't go. As soon as you mandate anything, right, it leads to disengagement. And so, again, there's a big lesson here for senior leaders, senior managers, is that even though culture doesn't belong to you, it doesn't. It belongs to everybody within the team. Through your actions or behaviors, you have the power, if that's the right word, to destroy it. And nothing unites a team like a bad leader. Nothing unites a team like a bad leader. And at that point, what you've created is a combatant culture. So a team of people who are still dedicated to the work that the organization has to do, but they're actively working against the person leading them. Now, if you're that person, don't do that. And yes, it's an easy thing to say, but I've also been that person. And you have to have that mirror conversation with yourself and say, well, am I being the best version of me here? And you're not, because you're worried about it, you're thinking about it, you're getting angry, irrationally so, you're thinking about it at the weekend. We talk a lot about taking work home with us. We actually, the thing that we take home with us is the emotion of work. And a big part of that is not only the culture of the team, but senior management, I guess, behavior. Senior managers, please don't take this the wrong way. I'm not having a go at you all, because some of you do a cracking job, right? But because you haven't been trained in kind of how to build great team culture, it's often hard to get it right. And this is why we have to try and pick up little bits and pieces from the people around us. You also have to recognize that it's your job to work with your team to build a really vibrant subculture. So, if you've got an organization, I don't know, let's say 100 people, and you've got 5 departments of 20 people, each manager of each team has to define the culture for their team and how it contributes to the values and the vision of the organization. Because organizations only have a great culture if each of the subcultures is vibrant. And often what you'll see is one of the managers does a really great job, creates a really awesome culture. You know what? My first job working as a bank teller, I think I've mentioned his name in the past. Brian was the manager. I can't remember his surname. But he created a really awesome culture for those front counter staff. We knew what we had to do. We knew our tills needed to balance to the penny. We knew we needed to serve our customers in a particular way. We had to, kind of be on guard for security. But Brian himself found ways to, kind of make us laugh, or made sure that was levity, made sure that we had good breaks. But if your till didn't balance 2 days in a row, like, he'd have a word. Also, if you weren't contributing to the team, he'd also have a word, and he'd say things like, we're in this together. We're in this together is the most overused phrase in 2021. Like, it's the most overused COVID phrase. We're all in this together. It's like, we're really not, are we? Because someone posted, someone who I know on in my professional life, posted on Instagram and said, "Oh no, another lockdown, hashtag we're in this together." And it was a picture of a swimming pool. I'm like, well, you're clearly doing it different to the way that I'm doing it. Had a leaking roof, we had water pouring through the ceiling. I'm like, there's no water pouring through your ceiling. It's just being kept warm in your swimming pool. Anyway, he would remind us, short off track there, he would remind us that we're all in this together and we all had a job to do. And to be a team, he didn't need 11 captains on the pitch. He was a sports analogy. He didn't need 11 captains on the pitch, but he needed people to know when they needed to step up and be a captain. He said, and that's how teams work. I took a lot. The fact that I still remember it, kind of 35 years later is testament to that. But I think that, I still don't get a sense of people understand this concept of subcultures. And we end up with broken subcultures, which we call silos. I would say most of the work that I do is with broken silos, with people who've recognised their engagement scores are low and they need to do something about it. And they want to work well with other people. And of course you can do it. Of course you can do it. Of course you can, but there has to be a willingness to try and challenge the status quo. And then, coming right back to the topic, the leader not only has to demonstrate and show everyone how to do it, but they also have to hold people to account who aren't doing it as well. And at that point, what you get is continued vibrancy where people are happy, engaged, productive, and work gets done. All right. That's your podcast today. Hope you're well. Hope you're looking forward to Christmas, wherever you are in the world. Ta-ra for now.